Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is not only a story, it is a pulse that still beats across centuries. It is the fire of a man who refused to bow to the limits of his time, and the echo of a life lived at the very edge of what human will can achieve. Some men are born into the world quietly, their presence like the soft glow of a candle. Others arrive like a spark in dry grass, destined to set the horizon aflame. Greatness is not given. It is forged in fire, tested in storms, and carried on the backs of those who refuse to bow before fate. This is the story of a boy who refused to be ordinary, a boy who became a legend. Alexander was born in the summer of 356 BCE, in the city of Pella, the capital of the ancient kingdom of Macedon. His father, King Philip II, was a warrior king whose ambition stretched beyond the hills of Macedon. His mother, Olympias, was a woman of fierce spirit, whose pride in her son bordered on prophecy. She told him from the earliest days that he was destined for greatness. The palace air was thick with politics, strategy, and whispers of empire. Alexander grew up in an environment where the clash of swords was as common as the rustle of leaves, and the word impossible was not spoken. From the moment he could walk, he was surrounded by soldiers, scholars, and statesmen. But it was not only the art of war that shaped him. His father brought the philosopher Aristotle to tutor him, teaching him philosophy, science, literature, and ethics. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander learned that the mind was a weapon just as sharp as any blade, even as a child. His confidence was unnerving to those around him. There is a famous story from his youth. A mighty horse named Bucephalus was brought to his father, but it was wild, uncontrollable, and no man could tame it. Philip ordered it taken away, but Alexander, barely a teenager, stepped forward. He noticed that the horse was afraid of its own shadow, turning its head toward the sun so it would not see the shadow. Alexander calmed the beast and mounted it. In that moment, Philip looked at his son and said, "My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." That was the seed. Alexander began to believe not only in his father's vision, but in something greater, his own unshakable destiny. From the moment Alexander tamed Bucephalus, the world seemed to whisper his name, but whispers alone do not make legends. Actions do. His youth was not spent in idle games, but in training endless drills in spear and sword, racing through dusty courtyards, wrestling with soldiers twice his size, learning the rhythm of battle before he had ever stepped onto a battlefield. When he was only 16, his father Philip went off to campaign, leaving Alexander as regent, acting king in his absence. Most boys at that age were still learning the weight of responsibility. Alexander was already carrying it when a Thracian tribe rebelled against Macedon. Alexander did not wait for his father to return. He rode out at the head of the army, crushed the rebellion, and founded a city on the spot as a symbol of his authority. The boy was already becoming the man his enemies feared, but destiny has a way of calling earlier than expected. In 336 BCE, Philip II was assassinated, struck down at the height of his power. The throne passed to Alexander, who was just 20 years old. Youth can be a weakness in a king, but Alexander turned it into a weapon. He acted swiftly, crushing rivals, securing his position, and making it clear to all of Greece that a new lion now sat on Macedon's throne. His father had dreamed of invading the mighty Persian Empire, the greatest power the world had ever seen. Many would have been content to rule in peace, But Alexander's ambition was not of this world. He did not see borders, he saw horizons. In 334 BCE, he led a force of about 35,000 men across the Hellespont into Asia. As his feet touched Persian soil, he made a symbolic gesture. He threw a spear into the ground and declared the land his by right of conquest. It was not arrogance, it was prophecy in motion. The first great test came at the Battle of the Granicus River. The Persian satraps believed they could crush the young invader quickly, but Alexander led a direct cavalry charge across the river. Breaking their line, the risk was enormous. One slip could have ended him, but Alexander fought as though the gods themselves had shielded him. Victory was his. The road deeper into Asia was now open at the city of Gordium. He encountered the famous Gordian knot, an intricate knot that legend claimed could only be untied by the one destined to rule Asia. Instead of fumbling with the knot like others had, Alexander drew his sword and cut through it in a single stroke. It was more than a clever move. It was a declaration to the world. I will not wait for fate to unravel. I will shape it myself. This was Alexander's way, direct, decisive, fearless, and his men followed him not because he commanded them, but because he shared their struggles. He marched with them, ate with them, fought beside them. His courage was contagious, his vision unshakable. In 333 BCE, the young king faced his first encounter with Darius III, ruler of the vast Persian Empire. At Issus, the Persian army outnumbered Alexander's by tens of thousands. The air before the battle was heavy with the scent of fear. But Alexander thrived in the storm, leading a fierce cavalry charge straight at the heart of the Persian line. He sought not just victory, but the head of the serpent itself. Darius, seeing the Macedonian king racing toward him, fled the field, his army collapsing into chaos. In that single moment, the myth of Persian invincibility shattered. But Alexander's greatness was not only measured in the blood of battle, it was also in his vision. The fortified island city of Tyre had defied him, confident that its high walls and the sea would protect it. Most would have walked away. Alexander instead ordered a causeway built from the mainland to the island, feat of engineering under constant enemy attack. For 7 months they toiled, stone by stone, until the walls of Tyre fell. It was a message to the world. There is no fortress that determination cannot reach. In 332 BCE, Alexander turned toward Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule. There, in the desert, he visited the Oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis. History never recorded the full exchange, but it is said the oracle addressed him as son of Zeus. Whether it was prophecy or flattery, Alexander left with an even deeper conviction in his destiny. On the shores of the Mediterranean, he founded a city, Alexandria, that would become one of the greatest centers of learning and culture in the county and the ancient world. But the defining clash awaited him at Gaugamela in 331 BCE. Darius assembled an army so vast that it stretched beyond the horizon, perhaps the largest the ancient world had ever seen. Alexander's forces were vastly outnumbered, but numbers had never frightened him. He studied the terrain, outmaneuvered his enemy, and when the time came, he unleashed his cavalry in a wedge formation aimed directly at Darius. Once more, the Persian king fled again, and this time his empire fled with him. Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the treasures of the world, fell into Alexander's hands. At Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persia, he allowed his men to burn the great palace, a symbol that the old world had ended by the age of 25. Alexander was master of an empire stretching from Greece to the heart of Persia. But conquest is a hunger that grows as it feeds. He pressed eastward into the unknown, driven by the belief that beyond the next mountain lay another horizon to claim. Through Bactria and Sogdiana he marched, facing guerrilla resistance and harsh terrain, yet adapting to each challenge with the mind of a tactician and the heart of a warrior. In 327 BCE, he set his sights on India. Crossing the Hindu Kush, he entered a land of elephants, monsoons, and warriors as fierce as any he had faced. At the Battle of the Hydaspes, he met King Porus, who commanded war elephants that terrified Alexander's men. The clash was brutal, fought in rain and mud, but Alexander's strategy broke the elephants' line, and Porus was captured in an act that showed the measure of the man. Alexander did not humiliate his enemy. Instead, he restored Porus to his throne, saying, "A king should treat a king as a king." This victory should have been the gateway to further conquest. But his men, exhausted after years of marching, refused to go farther east. Alexander, though burning with ambition, listened to them, turned back, leading them down the Indus River, and then across the harsh Gedrosian desert, where the army suffered terribly. Yet even in suffering, he walked alongside his soldiers, sharing their thirst, refusing water when there was not enough. For all when Alexander returned to Babylon in 323 BCE, he was not the same young king who had first crossed the Hellespont. His empire stretched farther than any in history before him. He had walked on lands his childhood tutors could only point to on a map, seen the edge of the known world, and bent it to his will, but his eyes still searched the horizon. There was always another dream, another campaign, another river to cross. In those final months, Alexander began planning an expedition to Arabia. Perhaps even beyond, his mind seemed incapable of rest. His heart was still a furnace of ambition, but the human body, unlike the spirit, is not limitless. In early June, after days of feasts and planning, he fell ill. Fever gripped him, and his strength began to drain. Even then, he refused to show weakness. To his men, he met with officers, issued orders, and kept the vision of future conquests alive. As his condition worsened, the news spread through the camp. His soldiers' men, who had marched with him for over a decade, filed past his bed to see him one last time. Many wept openly. They did not see just their king, but the man who had shared their hunger, their wounds, their triumphs. Unable to speak, Alexander raised his hand in silent farewell on June 10, 323 BCE. In the palace of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, Alexander the Great died. He was 32 years old. The cause of his death remains a mystery. Some say fever, some poison, some fate itself. What is certain is that his death left an empire without its heart. His generals divided his lands, and the unity he had forged began to fracture. But the mark he left on history could not be divided. Alexander had lived more in 32 years than most could in 10 lifetimes. He had crossed deserts and mountains, broken the mightiest armies, founded cities, spread cultures, and carried an unshakable belief that no horizon was too far. His story is not simply one of conquest, it is one of vision, courage, and the relentless pursuit of what others call impossible. And this is where the inspiration lies. Alexander's greatness was not in his title. It was in his refusal to accept the limits handed to him. He did not wait for permission to dream. He acted. He did not allow fear to stop him. He moved forward even when the path was uncertain. He earned the loyalty of thousands not by standing above them, but by standing beside them in the mud, the rain, and the heat of battle. We will not all command armies or carve empires on maps, but we all face our own uncharted lands, goals we have not yet reached. Challenges that stand like mountains before us. The lesson Alexander leaves is this: the world will not hand you greatness. You must demand it of yourself. You must be willing to risk, to endure, to adapt, and to keep moving toward your vision. No matter how far it lies one day. Like Alexander, each of us will face the end of our march on when that day comes. The question will not be how long we lived, but how deeply, how boldly, how completely we chased the life we were capable of living. So go find your horizon, cut your own Gordian knots, stand in the face of overwhelming odds, and move forward anyway. Earn your victories, not by birthright, but by action. And when they speak of you, whether to a few or to thousands, let them say, "This one refused to be ordinary," because greatness is not a gift. It is a decision, and you can make it today.